Riverside.
Welcome to Dance Talk with Joanne Carey, where the dance world connects, the conversations inspire, and where we are keeping them real. I'm your host, Joanne Carey, and today I'm joined with Vladimir Angelov. I'm so excited to have him here today. We were just talking off camera, so I can't wait to talk about all the things plus so much more while we get into our conversation. But before I do that, I want to welcome Vladimir to Dance Talk. Thank you for joining me today, Vladimir.
Thank you so much, John. Very nice to be with you, and thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just want to let our listeners know that Vladimir started as a dancer, then a choreographer, a teacher, professor. He is well known within the dance industry, and he has just published a book called You, the Choreographer, Creating and Crafting Dance, which we are going to talk about. But before we get into that, I would like everybody to know a little bit of Vladimir's background. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself, Vladimir?
Yes, I was born in Bulgaria. This is a country between Romania and Greece. It's in the Balkans. It's a Mediterranean place, very nice and warm, on the same level with Spain and Italy, geographically. And I was trained in Vaganova technique in my native Bulgarian. We had teachers from the Mariinsky and from the Bolshoi Ballet in our National Dance Academy. And I was a bit rebellious as a young man. I was not very attracted to dancing all these prince stories. I was fascinated by real people and by real stories. And so by that time in Bulgaria, we had a communistic kind of socialist regime. We were basically the same like Russia. And so we didn't have a lot of access to Western things and information and knowledge. Everything was very illegal to seek and to get access to that kind of information. One of the first things I saw from the West was Jerome Robbins' West Side Story, the movie. And I was fascinated how it's possible to dance with sneakers and dance in the city, not in the ballet, studio, and climb around, on the cars and dance in the garage. And it was dynamic and fun and very American. I loved it. And then there was also a small group of Alvin Ailey dancers touring, kind of cultural diplomacy. And I was just so fascinated to see these dancers and its gorgeous proportions and the way they move, completely different than the classical dancers, and the stories or the images they were telling about spirituality and about being who you are and about hopes and anything contemporary and now. The nowness of dance was incredible. So that inspired me to seek ways to leave Bulgaria, which I did. I pretty much immigrated. So I came to, I first went to Austria, then France. I was kind of making my way through Western Europe. And I pretended basically that I went to a vacation for 3 days. I had one suitcase and a few $100s in my pocket, and I didn't speak any English.
Wow.
And that was my 3-day vacation to Vienna, and I never went back.
Wow.
And so after spending a few months in Europe, I finally made it to the States. I actually landed right here in Washington, D.C. at the Dallas airport.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was in 1991 in December.
Wow.
And that's how I started. That's when I came to this country. I landed in the airport and I had my suitcase. It was a small suitcase, some clothing. Strangely enough, I had also fork and knife there.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, bizarre. And I had $200 or $300 in my pocket, and I knew about 4 or 5 English words from these illegal movies we saw, like "Hello, how are you? I'm hungry," and I knew "I love you." Of course, it's very important. And so that was my start in this country.
Wow, that is amazing. You know, when I hear stories like that, when people come from such an oppressed area, it really touches me you know, because can so often take for granted our freedoms or what we're not exposed to.
Yeah.
You know, and I know I mentioned earlier off camera that I studied for a little while in Europe, and I know for me at that time when I was a student, I felt like a whole world was opened up to me. So I can only imagine what the whole world being opened up to you must have been like. And it certainly feeds a creative spirit and an artistic soul, I think, in such a
Yes.
deep, profound way. And I have to tell you, I always love to find things I connect with my guests. But I saw Alvin perform while I was in Paris as a student, and I've said this so many times on my podcast. You know, I was taking dance as a student, not in when I was studying in Europe. I was taking dance classes, but I saw their performance of Revelations, and I sat in that stadium, like it was called the Stade, you know, and I said, I have to do that.
Yes.
And so when you say seeing, you know, Alvin Ailey and what they bring to the world of dance is so, so powerful. You know, that resonates with me. So yeah, so they were a turning point for me in my own career, my own journey in dance. But this is not about me. This is about you. so so here you are now. You land in the United States. So welcome. I'm glad you're here all these years later, right? You know,
We made it.
and what did you say?
We made it.
Yes, yes, that's wonderful. And you came by yourself?
Yes. So I was by myself. I knew a couple of people here. I had
Mm-hmm.
a couple of friends from Europe
Mm-hmm.
who came before me. So thanks God, I had a place to stay. I had a room.
Yes.
You know, I had very, very, very basic stuff. I didn't know the
Yes.
language, so I needed some cash. So obviously, I had to work in the kitchen, and then I had
Mm-hmm.
to, help in construction. And so my first few months in America were just like every immigrant. So I
Yes.
sympathize with every legal or illegal or any human that comes to the
Yes.
States and have never been here before. It's
Yes.
very tough. But it's great. America is such an amazing place. It just gives opportunities, and people, when they sense talent, they give chance.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my chance. So I slowly progressed. 6 months later, I was knowing more language. And a year later, I was working at the library, sorting books. That was like,
Wow.
wow, this was amazing thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I graduated school, and little by little I started choreographing more and more, gaining more
Mm-hmm.
confidence. I was starting to do gigs as a dancer. Of course, I was still dancing a little bit, and gradually trying to convert it into choreography. I really, really wanted to choreograph.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started the university. I started meeting different people. I a little bit studied with Ronald K. Brown and Doug Veron, with Dan
Wow.
McIntyre. Mark Morris showed up and threw us
Wow.
some stuff. Twala Tarp did like 3 or 4 weeks of, experimenting with things. She had a commission with American Ballet Theater, and she wanted to prepare phrasing. And I was like, I can do it.
Wow.
We're not getting paid, but
So you're in New
please.
York now. This is now in
I
New
was
York?
actually in Washington,
In
D.C. I was at
Washington
the
still.
American University.
Oh, okay.
And so then I graduated, and my first job was actually, and I was doing small little solos here and there. I got um, a very cool kind of offer to be assistant choreographer. Debbie Allen was choreographing something at the Kennedy Center.
Wow.
And Patti LaBelle was in the production, and Arturo Sandoval, an amazing trumpet player from Miami. Um, and so she had all these celebrities, and I was like, yeah, can I volunteer? I would love to be your assistant.
Yeah.
So that was my first job after I graduated, and working with Debbie Allen was just like learn every minute. I learned something. It was just like, oh, how do you do this
Yeah.
scene and that scene, and how do you make the transitions between the choreography? How even you talk to the dancers? How do you talk to the artists? How do you make everybody feel comfortable? Because in her cast we had some celebrities,
Mm-hmm.
and we had some dancers who they just were there to make living.
Yeah.
And it was a great learning experience. And then I was at the Kennedy Center very often. And then the next thing happened is they needed a choreographer. Also, there was this opera production of Samson and Delilah. It's a beautiful opera. And then there is a ballet inside the opera. It's like 20 minutes. It's a sacrifice. It's like all these 12, 16 dancers doing some crazy ancient ritual. And so they had this Yuri, it's some choreographer that was supposed to choreograph this opera. And apparently the choreographer didn't come, canceled something. And literally they're looking for a choreographer. And I was like, I can do it. And the production by that time was, the conductor of the production was the artistic director of the Washington National Opera, the singer Placido Domingo.
Wow.
So I, say, I think I can do it. And I remember there was a friend of mine who was a dance critic, George Jackson, when we met Placido very accidentally. And he knew George Jackson. So he told George, so this is a Bulgarian choreographer? And George said yes. And he's like, well, I know a lot of great Bulgarian opera singers. And George Jackson, the dance critic, say, well, the Bulgarian choreographers are also not too bad. And they start laughing.
Wow.
And then Placido said, why don't talk to my assistant, Michelle, and let's keep that going. Let's just get a contract. And I couldn't believe everything happened literally like in 2 minutes.
Wow.
And then for the next 7 years, I was doing dances for the operas at the Kennedy Center. So that was the launch of my career.
That's amazing.
And then, San Francisco Ballet, then I went to Indianapolis Ballet, Richmond Ballet, Alberta, so a lot of companies, and I started traveling, finished National Ballet. I went to the Mariinsky Ballet in St. Petersburg. I choreographed a piece for them. I went to Japan, Tokyo City Ballet. So I basically, for 25 years, until a few years ago, I choreographed all over. I traveled a lot, and I choreographed all sorts of things, classical, neoclassical, a lot. My specialty kind of neoclassical, contemporary.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Ballet and point. But I choreographed a lot of, television. I choreographed some commercials in Hollywood. A friend of mine, composer, suggested. So yeah, and then I decided to kind of I like you do something for 20, 30 years, like
you need a break.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Let's do something else. So that was the switch to icons, and that was the switch to the book.
I see. And it's amazing to hear your story, and so inspiring. It's inspiring me, and I'm sure it's going to inspire so many listeners, because you really, first of all, again, just living that American dream, your dream as a young boy, that you were, exposed. You saw that performance of West Side Story illegally, and then here you are, you make your way, you follow a dream, and I always find that so courageous, the courage people have to go after things, and you seem like, when it's that calling, when it's really that deeper calling, it's something that you're meant to do and born to do, things just happen. Like you're put in the place where you're supposed to be with the people you're supposed to be. So it's so inspiring to hear that. So congratulations. I mean, how wonderful. And what did you say? 25 years, 25, 23 years?
Yeah. So I came to the States, I was like 22, 3. And so I just, it took off very quickly. I was actually surprised. I didn't expect that my career is gonna unfold so well and so fast and so quickly.
Right?
I never imagined that I will be choreographing and my dances will be performed at the Kennedy Center and I'll be traveling all over the world. I was just thinking, I'll just maybe work for a small company or something.
And it's amazing too, because knowing, some people know they want to perform, I only want to perform, but you have that in you, that you want to choreograph, you want to be a choreographer. And was it, going back to your interest, you were saying earlier about people and real life things and real life stories, that you felt you wanted to tell them through movement? Talk about that a little bit, like that calling as a choreographer. I'm calling it a calling, as a choreographer.
Well, I feel that so when I was young man, I actually was in this apprenticeship with this ballet company in Bulgaria. We had the national ballet, which was doing all these um, huge classical ballets. That was the national ballet. And then we had this small company that just opened up that was more like into contemporary ballet. And they invited Alberto Alonso from Cuba, and then invited some Russian modern choreographer. Well, how modern was that? I don't know. But so they start opening up a little bit about we did a little bit of balancing. We did all this kind of new stuff, new choreographers. But what fascinates me with both companies, with the classical and the contemporary, is that choreographers are, it, we're kind of invisible. We go to the theater and you see these gorgeous dancers, and the ballerina, this one leg, she spins 32 fouettes, and you have, some very handsome prints. And so what we see is the dancers. We sense the choreography. We kind of see it, but we don't really accredit it properly. So it's kind of a very interesting paradox. And so the choreographers are the one who actually made the dance, but we don't know them.
Yeah.
It's almost like going to a restaurant, and I'm sure every human being has been in a restaurant and they love the food. And here's the funny paradox. I actually start doing it because I noticed that nobody's doing it. So when I go to a restaurant nowadays, I have my dinner, and when I'm about to pay the bill, I say to the waiter, "Hey, who's the cook?" And they say, "Carlos." I was like, "Is it okay to tell him to come? I just want to say that I really like his food." And Carlos comes in, cleaning his hands, like,
Wow.
"Hi, sir, is everything okay?" I'm like, "That was great lasagna, Carlos. I mean, it's just really, really very good." It's like, "Well, thank you. Thank you. We don't get to hear that a lot." And we shake hands and he goes back.
Yeah.
And so it is the cook who actually makes us come to a certain restaurant, but we never meet him. We never know him. Somewhere in the back. He's just hidden. So it's the same with the choreographers. We kind of make a lot of stuff. We're kind of very important. I'm sorry, I kind of think that we're the most important because without a cook, there is no restaurant. The waiter, the napkins and the drapery and the chairs and everything can be plastic, a plastic plate. But still, if the food is very good, we're going to go back to that restaurant. It's the cook.
Yeah.
So I felt that we kind of have to make ourselves more visible.
Yes.
And the way to do it is to, as you say, Joanne, is to bring these stories, to bring these more original things that as we create, as you say, creating ballet from scratch, not based on a fairy tale in Germany from 2 centuries ago, not based on some French beautiful poetry, which is great.
Yes,
Giselle,
of course,
they're very good. But also to make sure that we face life and we take the essence of today and somehow with work and sweat and tears and enormous amount of creative force, we put something on stage that it's relatable to who we are as people and to today.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking that this is important and we have to address that. The dancers are amazing.
Yeah.
They're like stars.
Yeah.
And so here's the good news. They're shooting stars. They're like bright in the sky. And unfortunately, I grew up with an amazing icon dancer, Mikhail Baryshnikov, for example. And now I mention the name Mikhail Baryshnikov to 16-year-old. They have no idea who is that. So that's the star who's shooting up and then disappearing in the nightly sky. But choreographers, Joanne, the choreographers, Petit Pas, he's still star. Valentine, he has been dead for 30 or 40 years. We still do his ballets.
Yes.
So the choreographers are not shooting stars that go empty in the sky. We are icons. We are always there. We will stand the wall.
Yeah.
And people will bow and they'll do the work. They'll believe in us. And they'll do these ballets if those ballets are good enough.
Yes, that's very powerful to say, and I'm trying to absorb all that because I mentioned to you prior to our getting on the project I'll be working on, but but I just it's so important, what goes into, like you're saying, the making of a piece, and what goes into all that. And what I like also, you referenced, I know I'm just going to let everybody know, when you said icons, Vladimir has it's called Icon Smart, so
Yeah.
you referenced that. He referenced that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's, I think, being the champion for choreographers like you
Yeah.
are, is really powerful, and it gives me a sense of, yeah, like, and the kindness that you take for a cook or a chef in a restaurant, the people in the bathroom who clean the bathroom, wipe the table, push the broom on the floor, take your garbage.
Yeah.
We're all part of what's important in life,
Yeah.
right? When we really take the time to stop and take those moments. That's what I love too, like you're saying, about real life stories, telling those real life stories, which is so, so powerful. So I had a question for you, but I think you probably already answered it. Do you feel that dance artists are underrepresented? But I think talking about choreography the way you did, I would say more we need to represent our choreographers more and really let people know the importance of a choreographer. Correct?
Yes. So what happened is exactly that. So after I felt that, I pretty much said what I had to say as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned my lessons the hard way. Sometimes it takes 10 years to learn something that can be taught maybe in 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
And this is brutal, because there's nobody to support you or to tell you. Choreographers are lonely soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
The dance students, the dance artists, the performers, they have teachers, they can go to the studios, they can get feedback, they have coaches, they have support system. Choreographers, nobody has support system. You're just alone. You just go there and dive in the deep
Create.
water, and you can either learn to swim immediately and survive somehow or drown. So it's a little bit harsh on us. So in 2015, after I kind of had my
Mm-hmm.
middle of the life birthday,
Yeah.
I was thinking, switching gears, you kind of see your life behind.
Mm-hmm.
You have half of it done, and
Mm-hmm.
you see your life in the front, and you're like, so what we're doing here, if we have that limited time left in the front of us, how
Mm-hmm.
we can make it as useful as possible. Very tough questions,
Mm-hmm.
because we as humans, we don't live only one life. We actually live two lives.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one begins when we realize that the first one is very short and fragile.
Mm-hmm.
So what I decided to do with my second life is to basically create a platform for those choreographers who I felt that, we're doing a lot of work here, and it's kind of, we're just in the background. So we have like AGMA, we have like the dancers, they have unions, they have a lot of stuff going on. There is a organization called National Dance Education Organizations,
Yep.
which is for teachers. It's phenomenal. Susan, she's a good friend of mine. Yeah, she's great. Well, I love her. Dance Critics Association. There is the scholars, everybody has association and professional development kind of union of some sort. They have network. So I did a study, and it turns out that the choreographers do not have, there is one I think there is a Israeli network of choreographers, which has about 62 choreographers. And then there is one in Estonia. There are 12 or 16 choreographers, and they gather at the coffee and have coffee every month, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but there is not, yeah, why not? But there is not really like an organized
System.
infrastructure for us, for the choreographers. And so I was thinking, and I know a lot of choreographers because I did that for 25 years, and I know a lot of artistic directors and agents, and I've traveled a lot, and I have contacts all over. And so I was speaking to my colleagues, and I was like, hey, can we sign a letter? Like, I don't know, Let's get signatures. Like, how about 100 choreographers signature? Let's just open an association.
Wow.
So in May 12, 2015, almost 9 years ago, 10 years,
Wow.
we established the International Choreography Organization and Networking Services. Abbreviation, International Choreography Organization and Networking Services. Icons.
Yes.
Icons Incorporated. So based in Washington, D.C., and we start slowly building a network. It's basically creating like a CNN for choreography or choreographers.
Right.
Offering any sorts of, information about upcoming residencies, funding for choreographers, professional development for choreographers, open calls, festivals, somebody want to show a work, sharing work, mentoring, anything that books on choreography, films on choreography talks, choreography conferences, or platforms where people can show off work. So anything that has to do with choreography, everything choreographic pretty much. And so we started with these 120 choreographers in our network. And now 10 years later, we have about 5,200 in our network from 36 countries around the globe. We have another 2,000 or 3,000 in our social group. We have like multiple little platforms. So we service about 7,000 or 8,000 choreographers every month.
Congratulations.
Like providing monthly information, distribute, through the website, through social media channels. And also we wanted to just organize ourselves in some sort of a platform. And so I have a small board of directors. I have another board of choreographers who we have all the famous choreographers there. And so we had 3 goals. Goal number 1 is to create some sort of a book, textbook in choreography. Goal number 2 was to create a network that we can gather information from all over the world. And goal number 3 was to establish some sort of a conference for choreographers, like a 3-day gathering, 1-week gathering somewhere. So that was the 3 goals. And the first goal we just accomplished. We have a book. And the second goal has been already going on for 10 years. And the third goal, hopefully we're going to have conference within the next 1 or 2 years too.
That's exciting. I want to come to this conference.
Okay.
But
we'll invite you, Joanne.
Yes. Let's go back to the book. That's so exciting. So the book is titled You, the Choreographer, Creating and Crafting Dance. So do you have a copy you can hold up at all?
Yes, I do. Let me see.
Because I only had notes for it.
It's my office copy, but this is the book.
Yes, beautiful.
And it's about 600 pages.
Yes.
It's kind of a textbook. It's much back in 2 semesters, but you can do that in 2 days because it has a lot of graphics and diagrams, and it has a lot of photographs.
Very nice.
All sorts of, it's very visual.
Yes, it is. Yep. For anybody who's not watching this on video, but who is listening just to the audio, Vladimir is holding up this gorgeous book. I'm going to have to add it to my collection back here. So I have to put it up there.
I'll autograph it for you.
Oh, that'd be great. Yes. But I was reading about the book and the outline, which was fascinating. It's a lot of information to take in a short period of time. But I found it fascinating because, first of all, I love that kind of stuff. I'd love to really dive in and know. And I just thought, what a great tool. I'm not trying to reduce it to a tool, but it's a tool. It is this great tool that you can give to a choreographer. You can use so in multiple ways, dancers, teachers, in a dance studio situation, in the school systems, in college, it's so multi-purposed and multifaceted. And I'll have to say, I did print out, watch this. So now I'm going to hold up my notes that I love the chart. Can you see the chart?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Charts.
I love that it had that chart because I just thought that's so great because first of all, you can tell the amount of work that went into the book. This isn't just, written over a course, in my opinion. You can tell me how long it took you to write the book.
Yeah, 10 years.
10 years. It's evident, but Vladimir, it's really evident that so much work, care, detail, research went
Yes,
into the book so that it holds up, that it's something that's going to last. It's going to be in somebody's library of books to choose. I don't say that lightly.
thank you so much,
You're
Joanne.
welcome. You're really welcome. I look forward to, pulling it apart. I really do, especially as I enter into that more and more, because I have to tell you, I read something, I'm trying to look at my note where it was. I think it was when you were in Bulgaria and you were younger, and you were told that dancers weren't smart.
That's true.
And that resonated with me because I remember when I was in high school, I had a teacher. I love, I always danced. Not since I was little. I didn't start when I was little. But I loved dance. I loved everything about it. I loved the old movies. My father and I would watch old movies, anything I could get my hands on. And I also love to speak French. I was also a very smart student, so I was also very, intellectual, I should say,
Mhm.
And the teacher said to me, "Why would you want to do that? You wouldn't be using your brain." I felt like a knife went through my heart when
Oh
she
my
said that.
goodness.
And that stayed with me. And I think it kept me, even though I had, like you, it's very, the year 23, the 23-year mark in your career must be pivotal, because that's when I changed too. I changed from studio owner to doing this and everything I'm doing now. But it stayed with me even as my studio was successful. I always was questioning. I always was searching. I always was, and I say that because teachers, we don't know, you have to choose your words wisely,
Yeah,
and it made such an impression on me. And so when I read that to you, I thought, oh, I know that feeling.
yeah.
So I love that this book is a smart, intelligent book.
You're so sweet. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Oh my.
Books should be kind of nice, smart, right? That's
Yes,
the way, I guess.
yes. Yes. So talk about the process that went into to first of all, how you were deciding how you wanted to structure the book. Talk about that process.
Yes. So, fun facts. Choreographers don't like writing, and unless they write about themselves, which is biography,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't like writing about the process because the process is very different for every choreographer. So when I was a young student and I wanted to be a choreographer, there is just no way for me to learn how to do it. And so I was asking questions, how do you do it? How? And every time they told me, well, you figure it out. So there's no manual or tool.
Mm-hmm.
And because my parents were intellectuals and we had a lot of books, we had all 2,000 or 3,000 books at home, it's like all these big
Wow.
shelves. I was like, there should be a book on choreography written by choreographers. And so I started researching. And of course, the first thing you get into is a beautiful biography of Martha Graham,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful biography of Merce Cunningham, Mark Morris. I mean, everybody has their biography. And they describe how they work. So I read them. I read all of them. But I was like, but doesn't tell me how do I work? How do I work? How do I find
Mm-hmm.
myself? So then I was thinking maybe I should research choreography book written by choreographers for choreographers.
Ah.
And so there are only 2 books in the history of dance. So the first book was written by a French choreographer, Jean-Georges Noverre,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in 1760, called Letters for Ballet and Dance.
Mm-hmm.
Jean-Georges Noverre was very angry. He was a choreographer working in Stuttgart. He was
Mm-hmm.
French. He was very angry that he didn't get a chance to work with Paris.
Yes.
And so he started writing letter to Duchamp, this current director there, who was not very good choreographer. And so in his letters, he kind of expressing frustration and also kind of giving his ideas how to choreograph. And so there are 16 letters, literally letters.
Wow.
Dear sir, I mean, literally, there are letters.
Wow.
And in each letter, he addresses different facets of choreography, how to maneuver the ensemble, how to create characters, how to interact, how to do transitions. So this is the very first manuscript of Georges Noverre in in 1760.
1760. Yep.
And maybe the most important book in choreography written in human history. And the day, April 29th, was the birthday of Jean-Georges Nouvelle, which today we celebrate as International Dance Day. That's why. That's the connection. The International Dance Day is International Dance Day because 29th of April is the birthday of Jean-Georges Nouvelle. He's one of the most
Wow.
important choreographers and the first choreographer who wrote a book in choreography. So then nothing happened for about 180 years. And then an American choreographer who was teaching choreography classes a lot got tired of repeating and repeating and repeating all this information of how do you do a phrase, how do you manipulate the phrase, how you put the phrase in the music, how do you do music research. So she decided to put that in writing in a journal. Her name is Doris Humphrey. And so she had all this written down, and she was seeking to publish a book about how to choreograph. And she wanted to potentially that be a book so she can kind of send it in advance. Let's say she goes to Bennington College, and before she goes there, she kind of want to send the book a month earlier for kids to study a little bit. And then she shows up and they do the choreography workshop. And so she finished the book in 1958, and unfortunately she died. And the book was never really published during her lifetime. So 1 year later, her son Charles decided to publish the book. He actually established a book publishing company called Princeton Horizon Book Publishing Company, which is in New Jersey.
So it's right down. It's like 40 minutes from me. Sorry, I'm interrupting. Go ahead.
And Charles is Doris Humphrey's son. He's 87. We met first time 5 years ago, and I told him I have a lot of quotations of your mother in my book. Would you publish my book? And Charles said, is it full color? And I say, yes. He's like, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to, but I'll refer you to the best publisher in the world, and they're going to publish it, which he did.
Wow.
And so, so basically, You, the Choreographer, Creating a Creative Dance, Vladimir Angelov 2023, is the third book by a choreographer for choreographers that doesn't have a personal style of like, this is how I choreograph, but it's like, how do you choreograph? How do you organize movement, no matter who you are?
Wow.
And what's your personal style?
Bravo. That's really, that is really amazing. And what a great story, too. You are filled with really great stories. You really are. And your life, it really is exciting. All the little connections, too. And now you're part of this history in this, like you were saying earlier, too, right? You have this historical thing. Here it is, the third book ever.
Yes. And it's a big book. So it was very difficult to write. So the question was, do we write a small, tiny book? Because Jean-Georges Nouvel's book is 250 pages, and Doris Humphrey's book is 280 pages.
Okay.
So I was like, yeah, maybe we should do 300 pages. And then it turns out that it's just that the complexity of the contemporary world and the range of choreography interests, from very traditional ritual dancing, and there are still a lot of choreographers who do folkloric stuff, to ballet, to contemporary dance, to postmodern dance, to physical theater, sports, to neuroscience, artificial intelligence, and digital art.
Yeah.
It's just such a huge, humongous area right now. The choreography is just expanding and expanding so much that I felt we should not discriminate or skip somebody or something. I think it's better to have more. And then choreographers can decide, that's not my thing. Let me just skip this chapter. Yeah. But it's better to have more than less. So we decided I actually formed. So what I did is I also studied who are like the academic people who wrote books in choreography. So basically we have a lot, but I picked like the 12 top, like Larry Lavender, Joanne Butterworth from Amsterdam. Like I picked like the top people in universities who they're kind of part-time choreographers, they're educators,
Mm-hmm.
but they do like one piece a year or something for the dance concert. But they have written a lot about choreography, and they have this very basic, like basic dance composition 101,
Mm-hmm.
120 pages. So I form a committee
Mm-hmm.
of them. So every time I write a chapter, I just send it to all of them, and I'm like, so what do you think? And they start criticizing me and bombarding me with questions and suggestions and all these things. And I think that's why it took 10 years, because I kind of didn't want to miss anything.
Sure.
And some of the suggestions that those, I mean, all of them are scholars and PhDs and chairmen of departments and stuff like that in academia. For them, that's very important. We're in the private industry, so choreography is, so we're kind of a different. It's like imagine NASA and SpaceX. So we're SpaceX.
Yeah.
So it was great to gather this information too. So I had as a private industry, I had my own experiences in choreography, and I know a vast network of all the choreographers we have in the network. And then the academicians gave me that kind of intellectual way of presenting things that is research, as you say, legitimate. We had a lot of citations. We had a lot of choreography interviews. Because of Icons Network, in the past 10 years, I have had access to the best choreographers in the world.
Wow.
We interviewed them. Some of the interviews are embedded in the book. And it's great to have this incredible range of practices.
Yeah.
Either is it Twala Tarp or Yvonne Reiner, a postmodernist, or to have somebody who is Akin-Kam, who is transcultural, you know, from different cultures, from Bangladesh and UK, you know, crossing.
Yeah.
And to have, you know, Asian choreographers, to have choreographers with disabilities. So everything is just crossing points, you know, it's like, what is the common practice of a ballet choreographer and Mark Brew, who is a choreographer on a wheelchair? It's like, what is the common thing? And there are common things. And so this is what the book addresses. So basically, the goal of this book is to give heads up on the choreographer, like how do you do it, and what are the possible options. So the book doesn't really teaches you, the book doesn't tell you you have to do this, this is right, this is wrong. The book tells you these are the options and these are the crossing points, and you can go here and that will be fine, and you can go the opposite, that will be fine too, if you have that aesthetic philosophy to back up what you're doing and why you're doing it and how it's linked to your life and how it's linked to our lives.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I can't wait to get my hands on it, because it really is. It's fascinating. You know, I working on the ballet that I'm working on now, it's from, you know, it's from the very beginning. And so it's been so interesting. I love process too. I mean, I really love that, the rehearsal. I love process. I love diving in the research, you know, and so I love being part of seeing the score being written, and you know, hearing that process with the composer, and then, you know, the scene design, everything that goes into it. And like you were saying earlier, the audience then sits and sees the final product, and they don't know all that's gone into it. You know, there's been so much that goes into it. Even when I had my studio, I'll share this with you, because when I had my studio, I had come off of a career in modern. I was starting to dance with a company in the city in New York for modern dance. And when I had my dance studio, I really had the kids learning modern, like it was modern and ballet were the little ones. But when I did my end of the year show, I always called it a show, not a recital, because I just didn't like that word. I didn't want to put it in a box, you know. But I would take a book, I would take a children's book and make it into a show. And I loved that process, because I would unpack it and make it come alive. And that's what we do. That's what choreographers do. Right? It's not just the movement you're seeing on stage. It's everything that goes into it as well. That's my opinion. I don't know if you,
Listen.
I got the thumbs up, everybody who's just listening on audio. I got Vladimir's thumbs up. No, but it's true. Like that it's so important, the process, you know. And some people start with music. Some people don't start with music. Some people start with story. Some people don't. It's the individual choreographer, the individual choice, or perhaps what the project is. Can you talk about that a little bit, like how the different processes are? And I know they're individual for everybody, but talk a little bit about those, and maybe talk a little bit about what your process is like.
Okay, well, let's start with something that may help our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
What is the process, and is there a wrong or right process? There is no wrong and right process. And actually, let's start backward. Imagine that the work has been already created.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of starting, how do we create the work? Let's go backward. The choreographer already has created the work. The audience is going to watch it. And I'm going to actually quote a term that was coined by a very wonderful choreographer I admire. Her name is Crystal Pite. So she called it the entry point in the work. So we're in the audience and we're watching the work, and we're sitting with all the people around us. And so as we watch the work unfolds in the front of us, me, the choreographer, I will be looking predominantly at the choreography and enjoying the music, of course, and costume design. And if you're a fashion designer, the first thing you're going to say, oh my God, can you believe she's wearing that dress? And then you're going to see the choreography too. And the composer is going to be like, wait, that sounds like Berlioz, early period.
Yeah.
So everybody has a different entry point to the work. We are seeing something that relates to our life, to our expertise, and to our attraction.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so let's pin that in the air. And now let's go back to the entry point, or the beginning of the work.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly the same. So different choreographers have different point of attraction and different gravity points that they're going to basically pull as the center of the work. And then everything is gonna go around them. It's pretty much like a snowball, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what start the snowball, as you said, maybe a story,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a life experience of a person who is no longer with us, that has shaken us to the core. So something that has been tremendously important to us. Most of the ballets created that have been very successful are about something that we have experienced, or we know very well, or we're very curious to learn about. The best ballets are created when we know something very well, we really have experienced it, and we think that we haven't really delved deeply enough into it. So we're using actually the work of art to educate ourselves and our audience. So there is a chapter in my book called Educating an Idea, which pretty much means that as we're learning, the practice of creating and learning are pretty much kind of the same. We're learning about ourselves as we're creating, and the creative process is informing what actually is happening with the subject we're tackling. So it's kind of this very interesting, almost like a Bermuda Triangle. Hopefully nobody's going to disappear, but it is a very mysterious energy of learning, experimenting, and creating at the same time.
That's yes. I mean, you're speaking right to me. I get it. I get it. It's fascinating, and it's a fascinating process. Being on both ends of it. When you're a dancer and you are, waiting to learn the movement, and you're absorbing all that, and you're taking on that responsibility of communicating whatever it is the choreography is asking of you, and then you put the music and you have to interpret the music, and there's so many layers. But then when you're on the other side of it and you're creating a piece, it's those same things, like it's like a blank canvas.
Right.
What I always would say too, especially when I would have my teachers at the studio, I would have one idea in my head, like it was starting here, and I always knew it would end up somewhere different than I originally thought. But I always trusted that it would get to where it needed to be, because I just believed that. I can't explain it other than I just believed it would, because of the process. I just thought that's, for me, what art and creating art is like, that you have to give over to the process. You have to, at some point, let that take over so it can really bloom and blossom. And then you can scale back if you need to, or that's when you start to like say, well, let's look at it now. Is that necessary? Does it need more
Yeah.
here? All those types of things. Can you talk about that? I love seeing and doing all. You know what? I use my hands all the time. If I'm I'm such a hand talker. So anybody who's not watching this, I'm using my hands very much. Can you talk about that?
Well, that's great. I mean, we're moving artists, right?
Yes.
The art of movement. So I would say that it is very normal that the process begins as a waterfall of ideas.
Mhm.
Giant, spontaneous, uncontrollable, panoramic, and a little bit unidentifiable, right? And as this waterfall of ideas dashes down and becomes a river, so river has a little bit more direction and it's more contained. And then that little river going to slowly go into some sort of a well, and the well, things get very contained and very streamlined. It's going to go into a pipe. And finally, after the pipe, it's going to go into a glass of water. So the entire waterfall will be reduced to a glass of water that we give our audience to have a sip.
Wow.
So it's the process that takes for us to present that little sip of water and say, isn't it fresh? It comes from the mountain and it's pure crystal.
Yes.
Something that you can feel the forest and the nature in it. That you can feel the power of that gigantic Niagara Falls. And yet you just have that sip that tells everything. So it's, it is a process, as you say.
Yes.
And it takes a lot of work to get it to that point. And it's the patience, the diligence, and the disciplines, but also with the book, it's also the skill of how to do it. And interestingly enough, even very experienced choreographers that we have talked to, I'm not going to say their names because I don't want to embarrass them, but even people who have choreographed for 25 years, like me, but they're way up in their career. They do Paris Opera, and they're like, I'm freaking out. I have no idea. I'm like, so are you gonna premiere your work next month? And so he's like, I'm still struggling. So it's a great question, Joanne, to ask, because no matter if this is a beginning choreographer or this is an experienced choreographer, the struggle to get from this to that, it's like tiny little chocolate.
Yes.
It's enormous, and it's always frustrating, and but it's also a pleasure, and it's struggle, but also it's excitement, and it's anxiety, but it's also anticipation. So it's all these creative forces and contradicting sometimes experiences and emotions, and in the middle of it is the choreographer, the choreographer, trying to create and craft dance.
Yes. What do you think makes a choreographer? Like what do you think when you were dancing, or if you were working with different dancers, would you say like, gosh, they would be a great choreographer, or or they're not so sure? What makes a good choreographer, in your opinion?
It's multiple things, but I would say, and I kind of, you're actually correct, like I watch sometimes in the dance studio, and ballet class, I watch 10, 12 girls line up on the bar, and they're doing pliés, and the teacher is counting, the musician is playing, and then at some point, the teacher starts looking at her text, get distracted, and gives a little break to the dance students, and some of them continue to do their plié and then trying to do their point work. And then there is this like one or two girls who are like, watching from the window, and another one is kind of doing cartwheels and stretching some sort of a rubber in a very weird way. So I'm like, those two will be choreographers.
The ones looking out the window?
The little that are not, the ones that are not really like the rest.
Yeah. Okay, because because their mind is somewhere. Right?
somewhere else. They're
Yeah,
still in the studio, but their
of course.
mind is out of the window.
Yes.
And this is it. It's the choreographer is basically the mind is out, but the
Yes.
body and the practice is in the studio.
Yes.
And that's maybe that children's story explains it all. But yeah, when you see it, you kind of know, yeah, that's
Yeah.
gonna be choreographer, right?
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I do. I just think the whole dance itself, I mean, that's why I'm in it. It just is I'm so passionate about it. I just love it. I love talking all these different conversations I'm getting to have with so many people. It's my life force,
Yeah,
and people used to say that to me. And I would just be like, no, they'd be like, my gosh, you light up when you talk about dance. When I had the studio, they'd be like, you light up with, and I'd be like, oh, sis. I would just be like, oh. And now I get it. Now I get what they're saying, because I do light up about it. It's just something that I just want everybody to experience whatever that, like you're saying, whatever that experience is for them, whatever that entry point is. That's
yeah,
so important. And I love that you say that, because that clarifies for me too, when I get so moved by a piece that I see or a ballet. I talked about on different podcasts with different guests, certain pieces I've seen, certain pieces of choreography I've seen or ballets I've seen, and I get so moved to tears by them. And or I need these moments of silence, I call them. I just need that moment. And that's what's so beautiful about it, because that's the entry point for me. It strikes me somewhere really deep. And that's
yeah.
what we do, and that's what we are to do as artists. I believe that's our job. And this book is, I mean, such a gift to the dance world. I don't say that lightly. I really don't. It really, if I was all those years ago when I was a student, I would have been like, wanting to have this book. I want it now. I can't wait to have it. I really can't wait to pull it apart. I read too, you mentioned Twyla Tharp, and she was your mentor, wasn't she? Was she?
Yes, we did some stuff. We had a very kind of brief creative relationship, but I admire her a lot. And as a matter
Yeah.
of fact, I kind of started choreographing right after I finished with her in 1996. Like the first 2 or 3 years, I was like choreographing like her, and I'm like, this looks like well, no, I have to find myself. I was doing
Mhm.
like the whole back running and the same
Yeah, yeah.
vocabulary, and like I just studied so briefly with this choreographer, but she's so influential, and her movements are so now embedded in my DNA, and I had to kind of find myself. And so choreographers are struggling with sometimes with that
Yeah.
part of themselves, with identity. But what I like about Twella, and let me quote her,
Mhm.
is she used to say, so if you'd like to work outside of the box, you need a box. Get in the
Okay.
box.
Get in the
What's
book.
the box?
What's
Can
the
you
book?
learn the box? Can you handle the box? How much you know about the box? So basically, and you're going to see when you open the book, it has a lot of graphs and diagrams.
Mhm.
So that's actually kind of the box. And yet it is not the box. So
Mhm.
it's a box, but it's a toolbox, but the toolbox has the tools to get you out of the box. It's paradoxical box. So so basically it's this dichotomy of rules and breaking them,
Mhm.
not to be criminal in terms of art, but
Yeah.
to stretch the boundaries of human perception
Yeah.
and, as you say, what touches us.
Mhm.
Because strangely enough, the more information we have with all these digital tools and the news, and I don't know why in my television I have like 560 channels. I barely watch like 2 or 3. But we are so overwhelmed that we're beginning to get numbed about
Yes.
important things in
Yes.
life. And so luckily the artists, we are also trying to expand the perception of the human brain and the psyche and like how we operate.
Mhm.
And we're kind of trying to anticipate the human nature in
Mhm.
advance. The good things about choreography, Joanne, that we're kind of fortune tellers. We're predictable people. We like to see what's happening in the future.
Mm.
And interestingly enough, with icons, with our organization, we do exactly that. We kind of have little predictions how the dance will be like in the future and what will be and how much technology will influence what we do and how much artificial intelligence will be doing dance makings and how creative algorithms will be taking over in 20 years from now. Joanne, actually maybe in 10 years from now, or hopefully in 50, maybe in half century, we're not going to be choreographing, machines will be choreographing. We're going to just input information. So it will be very important what exactly do we input. So basically, in a nutshell, let me actually quote somebody who is one of my favorite psychoanalysts, Sigmund Freud. So he said, we, the psychoanalyst, and me, are considered to be the explorers and the groundbreakers and the discoverers of human psyche. We're supposed to go to the darkest corners of the human mind and discover what's happening there. But every time I go there, I see that artists have been already there before me.
Wow.
So this is what we do. This is like what we're trying to create, these new senses, just new sensations. So on one hand, and that's what the book is doing. On one hand, we're kind of learning what is acceptable, what is norm. Icon Smart is like, instruments of choreography, objectives. Objectives is what we do, and then the norms, like what is acceptable or why it is acceptable and why it is not acceptable. And then what is beyond that. And norms can be political, moral, aesthetic. Norms can be predetermined, they can be made up. Norms can be something, they're always human construct. There are no norms in nature. Like a lion doesn't have norms to eat a rabbit, they just do it. And there is no ethics, there is no good or bad, it's just that's how it functions. So norms are something very artificial. And therefore it's kind of fluid because we agree on norms. So this is also something that choreographers tackle, like what can I create my own norms? Yes, we can. So it is really very interesting to see. And then how about if these norms are contradicting the other norms? Would that be a war, or can we create a new norm that incorporates both norms? So it's really a very interesting conversation, not only movement-wise, aesthetic, but also socially and philosophically, like how we operate with this incredible range of diversity and how we, embrace things rather than separate us from each other.
Yes. I mean, so powerful. So you have such a wealth of information and life experience, it really is, it's amazing just all you've accomplished, everything that you've accomplished. What would you say, what would you say, or what do you say to that young man who left his country and came to his new country? Like when you look back, or what do you say or think?
Well, surprise. I don't know.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I mean,
Good
I
stuff.
think, Joanne, as humans, because we need um, our drive is fed by satisfaction, and satisfaction is fed by success. And most of the times, and hopefully more of the time, success is fed by hard working and then finally bringing a product that is usable not only for personal gain, but also for the goods of everybody. So I think that, once we get to the point of feeling that we are contributing something, that you're helping somebody, I think this is something, that is very admirable for a person. I think everybody is striving to be happy. I love that part of the American Constitution, that you have the right to be happy.
Yes, right.
And this is really a groundbreaking moment in my life where I was just given opportunity in this country to do what I felt is good for not only for me but also for other people. Having that bridge of, as you say, of me and myself early in the years. I think, Joanne, we like to be surprised that we did better than we imagined. No.
Yes. Yeah.
We are always very happy if we do better than we wanted or we were thinking that we're going to be doing. So to myself, if you ask me what I'm going to say to this young man, myself, 30 years ago, I say this: hey, get this book.
Get
It's a
this
good
book.
one.
Yes, yes. And the book is called You, the Choreographer, Creating and Crafting the Dance. Vladimir Angelov. Thank you so much for joining me on Dance Talk. This has been a delight. I cannot wait to get the book and pick it apart and read it and reread it and use it. I'm going to make it worn. It's going to be a worn book. That's how I imagine. Thank you so much, Vladimir, for joining me on Dance Talk. Is there anything you want to leave our listeners with? We've given them so much. Anything you want to leave them with?
I'm good, but I want to thank you for providing me with the platform to talk to your audience. And I think you're doing phenomenal. I think you're offering something that it's extremely valuable, which is knowledge sharing and experiences sharing. So I'm so glad that you're doing that, and I want to wish you and your Dance Talk podcast all the best. And I'm thrilled, and it has been such an honor to speak with you. I'm very grateful for this invitation, and thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you, Vladimir, and thank you, listeners. This is Dance Talk with Joanne Carey. Follow us, like us, and share, share, share.
Powered by Riverside.